Hey, what's up? It's GW coming to you live. We're not going to talk about any movies today. In fact, we're going to talk about a director, one of my favorite directors who just passed away from emphysema related health issues, and I'm talking about David Lynch. If you haven't seen any of his stuff, I suggest you check it out. The guy was a master in style as well as storytelling. His movies were more of an experience than they were motion pictures, and he captivated me at a very, very young age. I had watched his movie, The Elephant Man, at, maybe I was like maybe 6 or 7. And to this day, that's a movie I cannot watch because it's so visceral, so real. And it stuck with me. And later on, most people would be synonymous with David Lynch if they heard the word Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks was a TV phenomenon that could never be equaled. But let me talk a little bit about the guy. Okay. He was born in 1946 in Missoula, Montana. Raised in a small town. And David Lynch, one of his trademarks in his movies was showing you the seedy underbelly of a nice Pleasantville set neighborhood. He was the master at showing you what darkness lies underneath the most beautiful facade, if you will. He made his first film, Eraserhead, in 1977. It created the term midnight movie. It also starred who would soon become a David Lynch regular, Jack Nance. Jack Nance was in Eraserhead, Twin Peaks, I believe Twin Peaks Firewalk. No, he was not in Firewalk with Me. He was in Blue Velvet. And David Lynch also gave Kyle MacLachlan a, boost of star power, gave him his first role. But Eraserhead was simply a surreal, industrial type, nightmare type film that had no straight story to it. Like I said, his movies were more of an experience than actual feature films. When you go into a David Lynch film, you throw reality out the window. Eraserhead was a movie about a couple who have a baby who is very, very deformed. And it's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't seen it, but it's basically this man losing touch of reality and not caring about anything. The end of the movie is some of the most messed up things you'll ever see, but it won critically acclaim. After that, after we released that film, Francis Ford Coppola, who directed The Godfather, noticed him and was rumored to have screenings of it on the set of Apocalypse Now. So figure that out. It was pretty cool. Next, he did Blue Velvet, and Blue Velvet, again, is like I just mentioned, gave Kyle MacLachlan his start. Blue Velvet introduced the world to one of Dennis Hopper's most evil characters in the form of Frank Booth. This movie is savage. It is very, very good, and it's a mystery wrapped up in a horror film. Not a traditional horror film. I'm talking about a human horror film. Where there are no zombies, no monsters, no nothing. They're just evil people. And David Lynch created Frank Booth. And Frank Booth, to me today, the character that Dennis Hopper played, is one of the most evil, terrifying, and unforgettable villains of cinema history. Excuse me. Blue Velvet was about a man who finds an ear in a field and ends up tracking it back and finding that Frank Booth has a lot to deal with it. I don't want to ruin the film for those of you who haven't seen it, but it was powerful. And up until I seen Blue Velvet, I had never seen anything like that before. His next film was a very, very wicked head trip that even the computer, when you go on the internet, you can't figure out what it's about. It's called Lost Highway, and it stars Patricia Arquette and and Bill Pullman and the late great Robert Blake. Robert Blake in the film plays Death. If you haven't seen it, it's going to require about 6 or 7 repeated viewings to actually realize what Lynch is trying to figure out, or what Lynch is trying to show you. This film also is notable because Marilyn Manson has a cameo in it, and Nine Inch Nails does the soundtrack. And it was not the first time that Trent Reznor and David Lynch had collaborated. If you haven't seen this, I think both Zargetti is also into this movie. I'm not sure. But the movie is a very, very wicked head trip. It's about a man who he plays a tenor saxophone in a nightclub, and he's dating Patricia Arquette. Mysterious videotapes show up, and it just becomes a surreal, hallucinogenic nightmare. Gary Busey is also in the film for a little bit. And then the film switches gears into what can only be described as a gangster sort of mystery, sort of head trip story. And it's, again, this is where the experience comes in. I really like the film. I know a lot of people misunderstood it, and to this day, a lot of people still don't get what the film's about because that's why they give it one shot. Like I said, it's more of an experience, and it didn't really garner critical acclaim. The one thing that is criticized about this film is that David Lynch put more sex in this film than anything. But it was incredible. The soundtrack is really rocking, and it does set the mood. And you could see why David Lynch would want to work with Trent Reznor after. If you know both of their styles, they're both almost equal. You know, Trent Reznor is a pioneer in industrial goth type rock, and David Lynch is a master of the strange, nightmarish, seedy underbelly of cinema. So David Lynch also jumped into the foray of TV in 1990 with Twin Peaks, and that thing was a phenomenon. To this day, it is still talked about. It is still analyzed. And if you watch that, and you don't watch any of David Lynch's films, if you watch Twin Peaks, the style is more prevalent. And again, it's a master of, he is a master of showing you this quite small town where people are a bit, I don't want to say strange, but eccentric. And it was a murder mystery. And there were unconventional, quirky characters all the way through this. But again, he nailed the darkness of a small town. The film was such a hit that it spawned a second season, and then it just went off the rails because of writing problems and a lot of other issues. When it first premiered, actually, David Lynch wanted to never ever solve who killed Laura Palmer. And again, it starred Kyle MacLachlan, a bunch of other people that came back for the revival that Showtime had. But David Lynch was never going to reveal, him and co-creator Mark Frost were never going to reveal who killed Laura Palmer. The TV station didn't want that. They wanted it to be solved and then have different cases or different incidents happen. So when this film was when this TV show was put out, one of the things, if you bought the DVD or you know anything about it, that it was wrapped up in 2 hours. It was going to be a made-for-TV movie. They also came back and they did a prequel story with a lot of the returning cast. And it was called Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. That film was so savagely cut by the film industry that David Lynch actually put out on the box set, the current box set, the Blu-ray, where all the deleted scenes that were chopped, if you put them back in the movie, would make a lot of sense. But David Lynch did create a phenomenon with Twin Peaks, and again, Kyle MacLachlan was starred. Kyle MacLachlan was sort of David Lynch's go-to guy. He was in Lost Highway, Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet, or not Lost Highway, Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, and Dune, which Dune, I can honestly tell you that whenever we were little, my dad took me to see it. I loved it. I didn't understand Lynch's work, and I think that was the first time I experienced his work. And a lot of things, when you're 7 and you go see this movie, you don't know. You're looking, and it seemed to me like it was a more mature Star Wars sort of deal looking back on it. Um, it had everything a kid could want, but the dialogue and the story dragged, and I didn't realize that the book that David Lynch was trying to adapt and all the struggles he went to. Because again, you're 7. I really liked it. I'm glad they put out a director's cut. I have both cuts, and again, I would watch that film a lot. You just have to go into that film knowing that maybe David Lynch tackled a little bit more, and there was a lot of issues. But it's a film that holds a near and dear spot to my heart because, again, it was one of the first films that I've ever seen David Lynch, direct. The second was Blue Velvet. And then I watched The Elephant Man, a movie to this day that I cannot bring myself to watch because David Lynch put it so surreal, so visceral. And that's a hard movie to watch. Although John Hurt won an award for playing the deformed John Merrick, it's something that traumatizes me to this day. And I think that was the power of that film, is it was supposed to traumatize you. It was supposed to put it in your face and say, look, this is an extreme case of, deformity from the time. And it was a real case. And the makeup and the way John Hurt conducted himself inside that costume was almost too real, and I think that's why it kind of gets me the way it does. And it's a hard film to watch. It really is. It's a black and white, and again, I think David Lynch used the black and white because it takes you back and it puts it right in your face. His next movie was called Mulholland Drive, and so in Mulholland Drive, there is a very, very terrifying scene right at the beginning. I mean, Lynch pulls no punches. It's almost a Quentin Tarantino thing where two guys sit out in the bar, they're talking, and one says about, he has a nightmare about one of them talks to the other about a nightmare he's been having. And he keeps seeing this monstrosity, lurking in an alley very close to the diner. So the two guys decide they're going to walk around the place, only to find the same monster in the same place. Very, very traumatic scene. And again, you don't ever see it. But Mulholland Drive is about a woman who's an amnesiac after a car crash. She and a Hollywood hopeful search for clues on who she is and what's going on in the twisted venture in Los Angeles beyond dreams and reality. Now, I don't know much about this film. I've seen it twice, but I'm not so keen up on it. But I remember there is a lot of David Lynch elements in here. The glitz, the glamour. And that's the other thing. In David Lynch's films, he makes everything shot in such a way where you can tell they're not like normal movies. To me, they're like, I don't even know the word. They're shot in such a way that they're very different from other movies you'd see. And I always loved his style. I really did. Also returning in Mulholland Drive was Michael J. Anderson. A lot of people don't know his name. He was the little midget, excuse my French, that was in Twin Peaks. He was the little guy in the red room. The Man from Another Place was his title. And David Lynch actually, you know, got him to play in this role, which is really wild. He was also in Carnival. If you guys don't know him by Twin Peaks, you probably would know him by Carnival. He was Samson. He was the carnival owner, carnival boss for the traveling carnivals. In 1990, David Lynch released a Nicolas Cage, Laura Dern dark comedy road trip crime drama thriller called Wild at Heart. This film I know pretty well. It Nicolas Cage plays Sailor and Laura Dern plays Lula. And to sum this up, this is a walk through the Wizard of Oz in hell. That is the best way to sort of sum this film up. I've seen this movie a very long time. For a long time, I've seen it. I've seen it a couple of times. Let me say this right. The description says young lovers Sailor and Luna run from a variety of weirdos that Lulu's mom is hired to kill Sailor. Yes, Lulu's mom in the movie is a very hateful, vengeful bitch, and she wants to see these two never get together, never get in love. Basically the same stuff. What's notable about this film too is the late William Dafoe is in it, plays Bobby Peru. Crispin Glover is in this film. Harry Dean Stanton, he was another Lynch regular at some point. Sherilyn Fenn was in this. She was in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Isabella Rossellini, I'm sorry. She was the girl in Lost Highway that Kyle MacLachlan had to rescue. Very, very trippy movie. The only thing with this movie is that unless it's streaming somewhere, the Blu-ray is highly sought after, and I've never seen it in print. It is a very, very cool movie if you get a chance to watch it. And I think it's one of Nicolas Cage's more sophisticated, outrageously compromised performances. I really enjoy it. Like I said, to sum it up, it's a walk through the yellow brick road in hell. So one more thing about Mulholland Drive before I move on. In reading about this film, this is something I didn't know. The set of reels that were sent out to theaters, David Lynch photocopied instructions to projectionists worldwide, whoever shot this movie, he did not want the film to be centered vertically on the screen. He wanted more overhead, which to allow the top part of the frame to be more visible than the bottom part, thus giving the film a very cool look. And the aspect ratio would be 185.1, which I don't know what that means. Without the projectionist manual correction ratio of the theatrical release, would have resulted in the top of the heads being cut off at the top of the silver screen. Lynch also asked to raise the volume on the film so that, again, viewers could experience the best. Now, I don't know if that's ever been done, but that is a pretty cool thing. So, it's something to keep in mind whenever you watch this. Now, actually, after the film wrapped, Naomi Watts actually lost her health insurance and faced eviction from her property after the film wrapped. Nicole Kidman talked her into staying. She was ready to leave LA, but apparently Nicole Kidman talked to her. And it's pretty interesting. So, a little bit of facts there. So we're going to jump back to Dune for a little bit. Like I said, I did see this in the theater. It has a soft spot for me. David Lynch actually said the only failure of his career was this movie. He refused numerous offers to work on a special edition DVD. That would explain why there's no commentary. He always claimed that revisiting the movie would be too painful, and As of 2004, Lynch clarified that a director's cut is impossible as Dino De, Dino De Laurentiis never allowed him to shoot the scenes he wanted to and take liberties with the source material. Which is kind of funny because Denis Villeneuve, his vision, you know, it's a more expanded version. Um, Again, I saw this in the theater. There is a couple of goofs in here, by the way. And if you don't know, at the 1 minute or 1 hour and 28 minute and 40 second mark, Paul is standing next to Paul, played by Kyle MacLachlan, standing next to Channy. His eyes are blue. In the next scene, Paul's eyes are normal. At this point in the movie, Paul has only been on the planet Dune for a few days. It takes extended exposure for the spice to change somebody's color of the eyes like blue, which happens to Paul later. So, you know, it's a goof, but nobody ever sees it. There's also two versions of this movie. There's scenes that are in the regular theatrical cut, the PG-13 movie, that are changed in the extended version. So, just want you to know that. But it's one of these things that, to me, that Dune, you go into it and yeah, you know it's overblown bad, but it's a fun ride. And especially, like I said, whenever I was a kid and I seen this at the theater, I I had a lot of fun with it. Um, Also, if you haven't seen the movie, the police singer Sting is in the movie. He plays Fade Rotha. He's one of the more memorable characters. He's the Baron's right-hand man when it comes to getting things done. This film has a history all its own, which we're going to have to get into at some point. Like I said, overblown, over budget, a lot of fights on the set. But, I mean, it's not the worst film that I've ever seen. It's definitely a very strange and odd sort of sci-fi project. It it's either you like it or you hate it. Yes, by today's standards, it's corny. Yes, the remakes are going to be more accessible and popular to the people that don't know. Also, I think part of the reason this film was not a huge success is because unless you've read the book, the way the dialogue is in the film, it's very, very strange. And I know that David Lynch had about 3 hours or 2 hours and 15 minutes to condense everything from a book this big. And of course, you're going to leave things out. But it was okay for what it was. I mean, if it's on TV, I'd watch it. It's very, very unique film, I guess you could say. So, David Lynch also has done a few TV shows. Aside from Twin Peaks, he did one called Hotel Room that was released in 1993. And I believe this was on HBO. It lasted, it was a 3-part miniseries, and it was set with different eras in a single hotel room in an odd hotel where employees never age. Every story has a slight twist, but the story is mostly dialogue heavy, psychology or psychological to relationship dramas. So unless you're a heavy David Lynch fan, this show would not appeal to you. I've seen a few episodes and it was definitely canceled before it could be definitely could come out and do the thing. David Lynch was trying to do something different with the with the way the stories were. Instead of being so seedy underbelly, he wanted to, try to flesh out with dialogue, which could work. I appreciated them. The one episode comes to mind was called Blackout. It's season 1, episode 3. Two people come to New York in order to see a doctor. In the hotel the night before the appointment, there's an electrical blackout, and you get to know everything there is to know. And it's one of these things, the more the dialogue goes, the more you uncover things. It was pretty good. I wish I would have a copy of it, but sadly, I don't think this show will ever come out on DVD. But it's worth checking out. The other one is called On the Air. On the Air premiered in 1992, and it was a half-hour sitcom, and it's about people in the 50s putting on a variety show with disastrous results. Again, Mark Frost and David Lynch collaborated on this. Again, I do not think we're ever going to see this. We're probably not going to see this ever released on Blu-ray unless somebody does a David Lynch, super duper catalog. It stars Ian Buchanan, Miguel Ferrer, bunch of people I don't know. David Lynch also directed another movie, which was his first G movie, called The Straight Story. And I haven't seen it because it was G. A lot of David Lynch's shorts were on lynchnet.com, which I used to frequent all the time because they would have an extra Twin Peaks section. So I would go check it out. David Lynch, too, his works were appreciated in video games. There was a lot of video games that took inspiration from his films, from the way he portrayed things in movies, like the game Control by Remedy. There's a certain connection there. You name it, David Lynch probably has influenced it in some type of way. So when he died, his net worth was about $70 million. He was married to Mary Sweeney from 2006, and they divorced shortly after 2006. Emily Stolf in 2009 to 2024. Before that, he was married to Mary Fisk in 1977. That lasted 10 years. Peggy Lynch from 1968 to 74. He has a child, Jennifer Lynch. He went to all kinds of schools. He went to George Washington University, AFI Conservatory, Francis C. Hammond Middle School, Pennsylvania, Academy of the Fine Arts, Cochran School for the Fine Arts and Design. Now, one thing about his career, he definitely was a pioneer in the strange, odd, unusual, and surreal. And I could end this by saying that I hope he's in the Red Room enjoying a damn fine cup of coffee. Twin Peaks fans will know that. But I don't know. For some reason, like I said, being that he was the first guy I really admired, he was the first time I seen one of his movies. Like I said, Blue Velvet. And then Twin Peaks, that thing, whenever that trailer premiered on NBC, scared the hell out of me. And I knew, just by the way that trailer was presented, that I had to see this. And for those of you who do not remember or cannot find it, they showed the mill from Twin Peaks, they showed the waterfall, and this voiceover would come over and it would say, "In this quaint small town, a murder has occurred." And it'd show the river, right? And this body in a plastic bag would float by. Scared the hell out of you. And it would say, "Who killed Laura Palmer?" Find out on Twin Peaks. Again, going back, that scared the crap out of me, and I was hooked, captivated. The Elephant Man in 1980, I still can't watch this movie because it has an impact. No other film has traumatized me or made me feel the way that film did. Lost Highway, it still, plays over and over in my head, and I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. A lot of his films, I think, were ahead of their time. Some of the things he conveyed, the average person, would get. You don't have to be a film scholar. You just have to put your mind, out there enough to where you can accept his ideas. And he really had an influence on me. I really love the guy. I don't even know what to say. I mean, I really enjoy his work. I'm an admirer of his work. I really like the way he portrayed things in videos. He came off as someone who created a certain style and definitely, changed the way that mainstream movies are felt. And he came with it, and he had no bones about anything. Um, the one thing that's kind of interesting too that I think is going to go down as a sort of nice little tidbit of trivia is that in the movie Eraserhead, the first movie he made, everybody was on him about what the baby was made out of, and I don't think he's ever revealed it. But for him to just shoot the movies he did, they're not just movies, they're experiences, they're masterpieces in their own little world. They each convey something different that was going on in his mind at that time. And I don't mean to sit here for a half hour and talk about the guy, but he has had a very big influence on me. And he was one of the first people, whenever I was getting into movies, his movies I check out, because you always heard about Blue Velvet. It's very violent, very controversial. And you check it out, and it sucks you into the world of the seedy underbelly of neighborhood living. In Twin Peaks, brought you to the forefront of quirky characters in a murder mystery. The Elephant Man took you right in 1900s to see John Merrick. And his films had a lasting impression on you, is what I'm trying to say. So before I end this, we're going to go through the top 10 most scariest movies of scariest parts of David Lynch. Now, not all of David Lynch. David Lynch films aren't horror, but there are a lot of terrifying moments in his films that really leave a lasting impact on the viewer. Well, some of these aren't, scary. They're more disturbing than anything, and they will leave a burn part in your brain. Number 10, The Elephant Man. In the beginning of The Elephant Man, you see John Merrick's mother trampled by a herd of elephants while her screams are muffled, hinting at bestiality and violent hysteria. Only David Lynch could manage to pull a short shot of elephants that are innocent look so disturbing. Now, I told you guys, and I was wrong, that John Hurt won an Academy Award for The Elephant Man. I was actually wrong about that. Despite earning 8 Academy Award nominations, it failed to win any. Then again, David Lynch never required any ornamental, appreciations for his films. They speak for themselves. So, that's number 10. Number 9, in Mulholland Drive, Diane Selwyn's suicide. It shows a girl who shoots herself due to her fragile psyche being shattered, and her violent scream echoes in the minds of the audience. When asked inspiration for this terrible scene, David Lynch simply answered, "If someone said to you, 'What was it about the girl that made you fall in love with her?' You couldn't say just one thing. It was many things. Same with this. You get an idea before it wasn't there, and then boom, it comes on so fast, and then bang." So he's telling you that things come over you in the blink of an eye, and sometimes your gut reaction, and it's a scary thing because it's grounded in reality. Number 8, The Lady in the Radiator from Eraserhead. Jack Nance's character basically is going cuckoo. He's pushed far to the limit from his nagging wife, the baby, and everything else. where he hallucinates and sees a lady come out of the radiator and dance for him. It's a very, very disturbing scene because at first it seems harmless, but then when you realize what's going on with his character's psyche, it it's just like he's slipping away and he's hallucinating, which is something that, when pushed far enough, can happen. Number 7, I told you guys about Frank Booth being one of the most evil, vile characters in cinema in Blue Velvet's from 1986. Kyle MacLachlan is hiding in the closet, and his character's hiding in the closet, and Frank Booth comes out, and it's a weird, sort of terrifyingly psycho, almost borderline rape scene happens. And Frank Booth not only does this, but he also is huffing helium before he does, or nitrous oxide, I believe. And Booth blatantly abuses drugs and sexually assaults Dorothy Valance, played by Isabella Rossini. Sorry. The scene deals with a wide range of disturbing topics, from voyeurism, drug use, to perverse infantilism. Frank Booth wants to be treated like a baby whenever he gets in a sexual mood, and it's very disturbing and creepy to watch. I mean, nothing can prepare you for it. And again, this is why Frank Booth is one of the most evil characters ever put to celluloid. Number 6 is Lost Highway. When Robert Blake shows up, he plays Death. And he goes to Bill Pullman, shows up at a party, and goes to Bill Pullman's character. And he hands out a cell phone. He says, "Call me." And Bill Pullman goes, "You're fucking crazy." He's like, "No, call me." That scene, you have to read between the lines. It's more psychological because the character of Death doesn't really exist. It's Bill Pullman's mind figuring out that he wants to kill his wife. That's what the whole scene's about. And it's done. So Robert Blake plays Death. Bill Pullman actually realizes that's what he wants to do and then creates Death as a person in this film. Very, very disturbing because, again, it shows the mind just snapping and going. And now we're going to talk about Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Bob appeared in Laura's room. Bob is the spirit killer in Twin Peaks. And if you guys ever seen that, which I'm not going to try to go into that, scariest scene is when Laura Palmer, played by Cheryl Lee Fenn, slowly climbs up the stairs to her bedroom, is confronted by a freakish, monster-looking man called Bob, played by Frank Silva. Frank Silva actually was a cameraman on Twin Peaks, and they didn't know what Bob looked like, so they decided, hey, we'll use him, and it worked. Bob is one of the most revered characters in Twin Peaks, as well as one of the most fan favorite. You see him hide in anticipation, and Lynch shoots the ceiling fan and watches it go just regularly, and it adds atmospheric horror because it just goes. And it just, again, it shows you how common, the seedy underbelly of something that could be so unordinary. David Lynch can make a bedroom scary. So definitely check. Number 4, Eraserhead. The baby is cut open. Jack Nance's character, Henry, cuts open a bandage and holds together the bloody mess of entrails. And it looks like a moving turkey. Henry indulges at cutting open the baby, the deformed baby. And basically goes to town because at this point he is driven by madness, not only from his nagging wife, but also the child. Now, here's the other thing that's cool. Between January 1993 and December 1996, they conducted interviews with David Lynch for his book Lynch on Lynch, which was released in 1997. In one such interview, David Lynch was asked, "What about the baby? How was it made?" Lynch declined to talk about it, stating, "I don't want to talk about it." So he's never revealed that. So, interesting point of fact. It gives a viewer something to think about. Very, very creepy. For number 3, we're going to jump back into Lost Highway. Lost Highway goes in a very, very sort of fragmented plot line. Don't look for plots, as I said, in David Lynch films, especially this one. Again, the movie I told you is about, weird videotapes being delivered to Fred's house. Fred, played by Bill Pullman. One of them actually shows Fred killing his wife. And to me, that scene shows that in Fred's mind, he is already... It's like the Silent Hill 2 thing. You're living in an alternate reality because what you did is so traumatic, you just want to forget about it. And it's exactly like the Silent Hill thing. Very, very creepy, very surreal. And the movie's final moments because of this are nothing but chaos and fear. And again, don't ask to be on the straight and narrow path with this film. So, it's a very, very unsettling scene about watching him kill his wife. But again, his psyche snaps, and that's what this film's about. If you go into it knowing that, you're going to have a good time. Or you're going to pay attention more. I shouldn't say good time. So number 2, we're going to jump to Inland Empire. Inland Empire was described as Lynch's most experimental film. Lynch gets under the skin of the viewer, staying there after a 3-hour-long film. So I didn't realize that film was 3 hours. Laura Dern's character is approached by a phantom in the hallway, and it's a very, very scary experience because it deals with claustrophobia. While an ineffective gun fails to kill the phantom, leaving us feeling impotent and helpless. I think that's what Inland Empire was. I think he wanted to convey a definite feeling of loss, hopelessness. Now, after Inland Empire, David Lynch quit directing. And then his health got bad. And like I said, he passed away from, emphysema-related stuff. He had no bones about it. He loved to smoke, he would tell you that. And number 1 is obviously the diner scene that I referenced earlier. But if you haven't seen any of David Lynch's films, in closing this, I suggest you check them out. They are a style all their own. They are masterpieces. Some people will love them. Some people won't get them. But to me, he was a filmmaker that, like I told you a couple of times in this video, he really got me into surreal cinema. And his films were the reason that I started getting more into cinema, and I really like his work. I admire his work. There's nothing like it in any film other than his films that I have seen. And like I told you before, I hope he's sitting in the Red Room sipping a damn fine cup of coffee, and he will be missed.